plan to tell you today about how I moved from this tie to these bare feet. Or rather, my green transition from being a stockbroker in London, working for the world's preeminent investment bank, Goldman Sachs, to being a regenerative farmer in Stellenbosch. But first I need to tell you a little bit about this tie. This is a Rudolf Mosshammer tie. In my Goldman Sachs days, I used to organize trips to Germany, ostensibly with the purpose of visiting the technology companies whose shares we wanted our clients to buy. But actually, the trip was always via Munich and the Mosshammer shop. One of the great things they did at Goldman Sachs was place juniors in between seniors on these long desks on the trading floor. At some stage, one of my bosses went on leave, and he paid a huge amount of money to cook in Raymond Blanc's kitchen. Now, Raymond Blanc brought high cuisine to the UK. On his return from holiday, I was pretending to be preparing sales pitches to my clients, but I was actually listening to him regale his clients with his exploits in the Blanc kitchen. And Raymond says to him, "Feeding your children McDonald's is an act of hate." I had the same reaction as you did when I heard that the first time. Now I know that Raymond is absolutely correct. It was the prospect of moving to Tokyo that made me quit Goldman. We brought our young family back to South Africa, where we ended up building a house on a farm near Stellenbosch. The house we built was out of clay we dug out of the ground, where we built our home. 11 years ago, I read Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, and I was so inspired by his meeting with Joel Salatin that I decided then and there to become a regenerative farmer, just like Joel Salatin. One of the most shocking parts of that book is when he takes the standard American meal and he puts the 5 dishes making up that meal into a mass spectrometer to determine the percentage of corn in each of these dishes. A burger, chips, a Coke, a dressed salad, and an ice cream. The one with the least corn in are the chips, and they contain 52% corn. In my Thai days, I would have told you that this is the only and best way to produce beef and feed the masses. Now I know that every single thing about this system is wrong. Had true cost accounting principles been applied, this beef would be 10 times the price. True cost what? Says the Thai. In the 5 years that I studied to get an honours degree in management accounting, and all the years I worked at Goldman, no one ever mentioned that phrase once. This is no reflection on accountants, rather on the failure of our reductionist education system, where really smart people fail to see context. The costs not included in this include inflammatory diseases, antibiotic resistance, humane animal treatment, environmental destruction, both from the way the food this animal is fed, as well as from how the animal is prepared for slaughter in these feedlots. Cattle are herbivores, they're not grainivores. And so when they're fed grains, which is in violation of their digestive systems, the wrong fats metabolize, and the omega-6 overload is inflammatory. Antibiotics are issued either to humans or to animals in these confinement animal feeding operations. Now, I know it's not the TED thing to do to ask you to vote, but I need a quick poll. Those of you who think that humans get more of the antibiotics than animals do, please raise your hands. You're wrong. Animals get 90%, which is why antibiotic resistance is such a problem. In fact, the World Health Organization lists it as the 4th biggest global health problem. What you see here is cheap food at a high cost. This slide shows what's happened to the forests of Mozambique since the year 2000. Now, the Thai will tell you that this combined Chinese and Mozambican assault on the forest is a highly successful and necessary part of the development of any country. Old growth, indigenous hardwood forests generate good foreign currency, and these are then replaced with gum and pine plantations for efficient wood and paper production. Planting indigenous trees is a cornerstone of regenerative agriculture. The Thai believe that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. What I've since learned is that the nutritional content of conventionally produced food has been in decline for 100 years. Over the last 10 years, as I've walked on the pastures of our farm, I've noticed increased vigor. We take regular soil tests, and every time it shows that the nutrients are increasing in our soils. More nutrients in the soil means healthier plants, healthier animals, healthier humans, and a healthier society. Now, the Thai would have told you that this is a beautiful picture of efficiency. It's a wheat harvest. I've since learned that the bare feet know better. The first law of nature is the law of diversity. Monoculture or one-crop farming is in violation of that law. And so the only way that a monoculture is kept alive is through a toxic combination of artificial fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, larvicides, grubicides. They're all on the side of the agricultural chemical company, and certainly not on the side of the farmer or the consumer. Furthermore, this system takes carbon out of the soil and pushes it into the atmosphere. Regenerative agriculture does the exact opposite. In fact, our farm, Spear in Stellenbosch, was the first farm in the world to be paid carbon credits for increasing the carbon content in the soil of our pastures where the cattle graze. This slide is another example, as the Thai would tell you, of how countries should develop. Use the natural resources and replace them with modern, efficient crops. Nothing epitomizes man's hubris and stupidity more than this slide. This is part of the Brazilian rainforest that's been removed to plant soya, which goes to China, where the oil is used for frying and to become margarine, and the remaining cake becomes a protein source for chickens, vegans, and pigs. Globally, we remove 36 football fields of rainforest every hour of every day. We remove the lungs of the earth to plant 4 crops: corn, soya, sugar, and palm oil. I told you this was about hubris and stupidity. The vegan movement is to be applauded for their passionate opposition to cage animal farming. However, if you're adopting that lifestyle for ecological reasons, you're completely misguided. First, the multi-species Brazilian rainforest is replaced with a monoculture of soya. Second, the only way to grow vegan food is through the use of artificial fertilizers. Cornell University and the Environmental Defense Fund recently released a report where they showed that the US fertilizer industry releases 3 times more methane than all other industries in the USA combined. Methane has 24 times the global warming potential of CO2. The vegan diet makes the environmental crisis worse. So this picture captures the essence of regenerative agriculture. Just for now, please ignore the enormous difference in vegetative growth to the right of my finger and to the left of my finger. Originally, we planted exactly the same seeds on this pasture. I took this photograph 6 weeks after the pigs had grazed to the right of my finger. The pigs have never grazed to the left of my finger. This shows the positive interaction between properly managed animals and soil recovery. The foundation of regenerative agriculture is a lot of animals in a small space for a short period of time, followed by long resting periods. 96% of the laying hens in South Africa live in metal cages. What it means is that 96% of the egg eaters in this room have chosen this life for these hens. Up to 5 stories high, they live on a bit less than an A4 page for their whole lives. The inset shows a de-beaked hen, or in industry parlance, a beak trimming gone wrong. Their beaks are trimmed to avoid stress-induced cannibalism. In contrast, the regenerative model of egg production is called outdoor egg production, not the consumer fraud known as free-range eggs. Free-range hens are barn-raised, so they're not free to range. Furthermore, because their housing is fixed, they're in contact with their own manure for their whole lives and therefore under disease pressure. And you've got the massive problem of dumping that manure. If you look very carefully, on the top left, You can see me walking towards the Hottentotsholland Mountains. Our hens are genuinely free to range during the day, and at night, they are safe from predators. They head into their eggmobiles where they're safe from the predators. We have 20 of these eggmobiles on our farm. Every single one is moved every single day to fresh pasture. This ensures adequate fertilization and avoids overgrazing and over-fertilization, followed by a 6-week resting period before any other animal grazes there. This ensures that the carbon, water, and nutrient cycles remain intact. This is where your bacon starts its journey to your mouth. You are, after all farmers. To my knowledge, there are only 3 commercial pig farmers who do not have their sows give birth in these gestation crates. They're in here for 28 days. The piglets are then weaned. She's moved to an insemination crate. 5 days later, she comes on heat. At that stage, they'll herd some boars into a passage in the front to stimulate her, and from the back, the human does artificial insemination. 115 days later, she gives birth again at about the time that these piglets become your bacon. This, according to the Thai, is the only way to raise pigs. Not only is there not a cage in sight on our farm, we have an on-farm butchery where we process our pork. We're also currently the only butchery in the country not adding nitrates and nitrites to our pork. Now, I hope there aren't too many of you who've had the misfortune of going to a conventional piggery and particularly experiencing their manure lagoons. But if you have, you'll know their waste is a very big problem. Waste is a human construct. Nature does not waste. In October last year, we started an experiment with planting summer squashes directly behind the pigs. All we needed to do was level the ground, sow the seeds, and water it. Still on the subject of waste, South Africa kills 19 million broiler chickens a month. 85% of their feathers get rendered and mixed into the next batches of chicken food. We started in May last year mulching our vineyards with chicken feathers. A mulch is a soil cover made of organic material. In this picture, the dark green areas, which are clearly visible, they have received the feathers, and the light green areas have not. Soil tests confirm the picture. We use gum paper to close our cardboard boxes. When last did you open a cardboard box that was sealed with plastic adhesive tape? It's completely unnecessary. Plastic ends up on land everywhere, which ends up in our rivers, which ends up in the sea, which ends up in all seafood, and then ends up in us. Regenerative agriculture is heavily dependent on labor. Lots of people working as opposed to machines, which is why it's such a great job creation opportunity. The Thai will tell you that the only way to keep people happy is to pay them really well. The bare feet have learned that pay is not enough. So in addition to paying our staff more than any of our neighbors, we give them extra paid leave. We have a farm exercise group, and then 3 mornings a week we meet for a farm circle where we sing together, do some mental work, a little bit of stretching, and we say our names and all the different languages represented on the farm. Now, even the Thai struggles to believe that we have to spray our food with poisons so dangerous that those applying these poisons to the food have to wear this kind of protective gear. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in the most widely used chemical of all time. South Africa is the only country in the world where the staple diet has been genetically modified to withstand that poison. The first of many glyphosate patents is as a micronutrient chelator. In other words, it binds to micronutrients, making them unavailable, and therefore every South African is walking around with a micronutrient deficiency. The correlation on this slide is almost perfect. It shows data from the Center for Disease Control for the increase in the diseases listed, and its correlation with data for the increased use of Roundup-ready crops, in other words, the use of glyphosate. Both these data sets are from the early 1990s, which is when Roundup-ready or glyphosate crops were released. I think it's now time to focus on my t-shirt. Now you understand it, eh? Interestingly, the subset of society that ingests the most glyphosate is those following the vegan diet. There's been a lot of Thai bashing going on. So what would the Thai say to all of this? Well, he would launch the same dagger that's always launched at me. How are you going to feed the world? We're going to be 9 billion by 2050. So there's a simple answer. Mr. Thai, your system does not feed the world. It pollutes the world and makes humans sick. Cancer treatment is the biggest and fastest growing speciality within medicine. The question, Mr. Thai, that you should be asking is how can we help regenerative organic agriculture feed the world? Because regenerative organic agriculture produces nutrient-dense food, creates employment, and heals the earth. I trust by now you've all understood there's only 2 types of farmers: regenerative farmers and destructive farmers. What Berry is saying is that every single time you eat, you choose your farmer. And so the most that you can do for our future on this planet is be a discerning consumer and support regenerative and organic agriculture. So, what's it going to be? The Thai or the bare feet? That choice is yours.